If you've been to Disney World, or Disneyland, or Tokyo Disneyland, or Disneyland Paris, then there's a good chance that you've, at some point, experienced the Main Street Electrical Parade. A version of the parade has run over in California for a combined 35 years out of the resort's 65-year history. In Florida, it ran for 14 years before coming back in 1999 and running for another 2 years, before coming back again in 2010 and running for 6 more years after that. And in Tokyo and Paris, it ran for just over a decade in the 80s and 90s. The result is that the soundtrack for the parade is one of the most iconic at the Disney parks, second only to maybe It's a Small World. Did you know that the song behind the parade wasn't made by Disney, had nothing to do with Disney when it was made, and that the person who did make it didn't even know Disney was using it for nearly a decade? Jean-Jacques Perrey, born Jean Leroy in 1929, was a French musician and is considered by many as one of the pioneers of electronic music. Growing up, he had played the accordion. However, at that point, music was simply a hobby. Rather than pursuing a musical career, he attended medical school in Paris. And it was then that he got his first taste of electronic music. He was introduced to a man by the name of Georges Genny, who had invented an instrument called the ondiolin. Essentially, it was an early electric synthesizer keyboard. It was fairly new and extremely novel, and it actually inspired Perrey to drop out of medical school and teach himself piano by ear. Genny then hired Perrey to help demo and sell the instrument to potential buyers. In 1960, he moved to America, where he began to build a career for himself by making jingles for television and radio ads. At that same time, he was experimenting with electronic music in his own studio. Towards the middle of the 1960s, he had partnered with another musician by the name of Gershon Kingsley, and the two released albums together under the name Perrey and Kingsley. One album in particular was released in 1967 and was titled Kaleidoscopic Vibrations, electronic pop music from way out. It was weird and different and experimental, and it was notable in that it was one of the first albums to include the use of the Moog synthesizer, a revolutionary electronic instrument. The Moog synthesizer was special in that it was modular, meaning that musicians could add and combine different modules to achieve different sounds. The Moog made their album popular enough that it would later be re-released in 1971 to capitalize on the instrument, and was retitled to Kaleidoscopic Vibrations: Spotlight on the Moog. Perrey, by the way, loved the Moog synthesizer. During his entire career, he had released 27 albums, and he made sure everyone knew what they were all about, with titles such as The Happy Moog, Moog Indigo, Moog Sensations, Moog Expressions, Moog Generation, Moog Mig-Mag Moog, Good Moog, Astral Animations and Computer Cartoons, and lastly, Moog Acid. Meanwhile, over in California, Disney was hard at work developing a nighttime parade to debut in Disneyland. Borrowing inspiration from Disney World's nighttime electrical water pageant show, the parade was going to feature a number of floats covered with vivid, colorful electrical lights. It would run down Main Street, USA, and so it was aptly named the Main Street Electrical Parade. While it was being developed, the topic of the musical score came up. VP of Entertainment at the time, Bob Janney, suggested that the parade utilize the score from Disney's classic animated feature, Fantasia. As the story goes, it was producer Jack Wagner who stepped in and insisted that it would be better to use something different, like electronic music, rather than orchestral music. After all, it was the Main Street Electrical Parade. He was given the weekend to find a track to pitch for the parade and wasted no time in going through his collection of music. It was that weekend that he happened across the Perrey and Kingsley album, Kaleidoscopic Vibrations, and it was on that album that he found the track Baroque Hoedown. Like the album itself, it was weird and interesting, and unlike a lot of electronic music at the time, it was extremely upbeat and energetic, which would be perfect for a parade. Disney turned to musician Paul Beaver to work on 2 demo tracks that used Baroque Hoedown as a foundation. both adding a bass line to the music as well as making a more patriotic version of it for the parade's finale. Disney was pleased enough with the result that they worked out the rights with Perry and Kingsley's publisher and got to work at adapting the song for the parade. For the parade's premiere, 6 tracks were put together, again using Baroque Hoedown as a foundation. They were titled Baroque, Alice, The Angry Dragon, Cinderella, Dumbo, and Patriotic Finale. The following year, an It's a Small World track was also created for its corresponding float. Over the years, the music for the parade, as well as the parade itself, evolved. Tracks were added as well as removed. After the passing of Paul Beaver, musician Don Dorsey took over the reins, and it was Dorsey who in 1977 created a fanfare for the parade's beginning. Just 2 years after that, he folded a vocoder into the mix, which gave human speech an electronic robotic sound. And the two of them, combined with Jack Wagner's narration, created the now iconic beginning of the classic parade.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Magic Kingdom proudly presents our spectacular festival pageant of nighttime magic and imagination in thousands of sparkling lights and electro-synthomagnetic musical sounds. The Main Street Electrical Parade.
A year later in 1980, Jean-Jacques took a vacation to the Disney parks, and to his complete surprise, he heard his Baroque Hoedown playing during the nighttime parade. As it had turned out, while Disney did arrange the rights to use the song with Perry and Kingsley's publisher, the publisher never told the two. Now, to be clear, legally, depending on the details of the musician-publisher relationship, they might not have had to tell them. They still got their check either way. But you'd think they'd let the two musicians know that one of their songs was playing nearly every night at one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. The Main Street Electrical Parade, and by extension Jean-Jacques' Baroque Hoedown, spanned 3 continents and by now has been played for hundreds of millions of people. Echoes of the music has even lived on in its successor, Paint the Night. Perry would continue to make and release electronic music right up until his passing in 2016. While perhaps he was never a household name, his legacy still touched the lives of millions of people, both as a pioneer of electronic music in general, and as the creator of one of the most recognizable pieces of Disney park music ever.